Hello, everyone. I'm Krasi, and I will be addressing a very important topic for every one of us, and it is about our future. We went through, as collective, together, we went through so much during the last 3 years. It was unbelievable. And we are all concerned what to expect from the future. And this we can see astrologically. Yes, we can see that. But of course, we need to know the past. We need to be a little bit informed about the history of the humanity on Earth in order to be able to predict the future. Of course, when we use the astrological placements, directions, and all astrological tools that we have. Now, usually the great changes which take place on Earth happen mainly due to the placements of the planets which are slower in motion, like Saturn, who is the main lord of karma, who is the one that participates in the decision-making of our destiny, what will happen to the human beings. And of course, the trans-Saturnian planets take very important part in this. Now, just to tell you, especially to those who are new, maybe, I'm using the sidereal zodiac, which is the astronomical one. I do not rely on the modern zodiac. The sidereal zodiac is showing you the true placements as they are on the sky. So we mainly look at Saturn because, as you know, maybe mythologically, when we trace him back to ancient Babylon and Sumer, this is God Ninurta. And who got Ninurta? And he is the one who opened the gate of and allowed the water from to pour over humanity. And I'm talking about the Great Flood. So you see that he had very karmic role in the destiny of the humanity. So we cannot look at astrologically and make considerations and our judgment be without Saturn. This is impossible. So I'm really starting with him. Of course, I do have in mind the other planets, their placements. I will mention those too. Now, like I told you, we need to know the history in order to know how the future will look like for us. So I will bring you just a little bit back. End of January of 2020, Saturn entered sidereal Capricorn, sidereal, the astronomical zodiac. So he entered sidereal Capricorn. He stayed in Capricorn 3 years until late January of 2023. And you saw how drastically he changed the events on Earth. He really, not solely, of course, because there were factors like the heliacal rise of Mars. I will discuss that too. But Saturn was very, very, very important. Immediately, I knew once he enters Capricorn, we will face unbelievable changes. And this is what happened. So he made what he made. You saw how the governmental structures changed. You saw how the financial system started changing. You saw how the markets, especially Saturn is being the ruler of Capricorn and being very powerful in Capricorn. You saw how he influenced the real estate markets, building markets, and all this enormously in a positive direction because he was very, very powerful in Capricorn. End of January of 2023, he entered sidereal Aquarius. And here is our question mark, because we still did not live through these times when Saturn will be in Aquarius, and this transit of Saturn will end of December of 2025. So we still have 2 and longer years to go and to experience his powers in Aquarius. Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn, but in a little bit different way. because, you know, Aquarius, again, tracing back the mythological stories and the mythological history, if you want to say so, is ruled by the god Enki, and Enki is magician. Enki is one of the three main divinities which have impact on the human genome, if you want. So it's a very, very important deity, and Saturn is in Aquarius. So we're talking about very, very, very serious presence of Saturn in Aquarius. Of course, right now he's retrograde. I don't mind him being retrograde. My experience with a retrograde Saturn is that he's not really that bad, but this is not really now the focus of my conversation. Now, let's see what happened. End of January of 2023, Saturn is entering Aquarius, and he will leave end of 2025. Let's go 30 years back, and I prepared a list of very, very important events, you know, back then happening during his presence in Aquarius, because also 30 years ago, Saturn entered Aquarius in 1993 and left 1996. So also, let me tell you something else, since we mentioned that the trans-Saturn planets play a very important role. Yes, they do. While Saturn was in Aquarius in 1993, he also formed sextile with Uranus. And Uranus is very important, not only because Uranus solely is represented by God Anu, the ruler of the cosmos, as the ruler of astrology, if you want, but Anu is the ruler of change, drastic change. And when they both make aspect, we immediately think of change of the financial systems, introducing something very new, innovations. And this is also what happened in 1993, up until 1996-7 even. And this is because we're talking about the whole presence of Saturn in Aquarius back then, same presence as now. Saturn is in Aquarius, but we're also talking about aspect between Saturn and Uranus. Like, let me remind you that from end of January of 2020 until end of January of 2023, Saturn was forming a square with Uranus. And this is why the events which happened back then were very drastic, very unpleasant, and we had the feeling that they're imposing something on us, and this is also related to the financial systems. So now we do see sextile between Saturn and Uranus, and 30 years back we also experienced a sextile. So when there is a relationship between them, well, disharmonious or harmonious, we always think of innovations drastically imposed or not that drastically. And we also always think about money, because Saturn is the one who is also allowing, you know, the resources to take place or not, because you can say that Jupiter is and Venus are related to money, but without Saturn, I have no idea how this would happen, how the abundance or availability of resources will take place, because Saturn is very, very important when it has to do with resources, money. So let's see what happened in 1993, and let's compare this year and the presence of Saturn from 2023 until late 2025 in Aquarius. So many, many important events took place. First of all, during this presence of Saturn in Aquarius back then, we noticed level of inflation in the States was stable, and indeed was lower than now. But let's see what happened. Clinton became president. Then the World Trade Center was attacked. There was a terrorist attack. I didn't know about that. Then look what happened. The Czechoslovakia separated and became two, Czech Republic and Slovakia. This is Uranus. See, drastic changes. Then the biggest betrayal for Russia, for the Soviet Union, when President Bush and the Russian President Yeltsin, they signed bilateral agreement, the treaty, which was the greatest betrayal and considered in the Russian history. On the 30th of April, World Wide Web was released into public domain from CERN in Switzerland. Uranus sextile Saturn, you see, it has to do with innovative technology, with internet. And look what important event took place. The Maastricht Treaty of the European Union was signed, and this treaty was like the beginning of the European Union. This happened in 1993 when Saturn was in Aquarius sextiling Uranus. And you know, let me just see. Yeah, this treaty was, yes, the beginning of the European Union. Large, enormous event. Let's see further. There were many events, including events in the Hollywood industry, but we don't care so much about them. Of course, they are important, but let's look at the most important ones. 1994, we continue. Saturn is still sextiling Uranus, and Saturn is still in Aquarius. The war between Serbia and Sarajevo took place. And I will open big bracket and remind you something important. At that time, in June, Mars became visible for the first time in Aries. The first visibility of Mars in Aries is promising war. He's hungry for war. Mars in Aries wants war. And let me remind you something. 1 year ago, I announced that. It was November 2021. Mars became visible for the first time in Scorpio. Guess what he brought? The war in Ukraine. So we have the war in Serbia. IRA, the Irish so-called terrorist group, ceased fire. The US, United States, are attacking the Persian Gulf. This is the start of the Persian War. And Russia is attacking Chechnya. And this is happening in 1994 after the heliacal rise of Mars and having into consideration, again, Saturn in Aquarius and Saturn sextiling Uranus. Let's see further. Again, I found many events, but I found the most, from my perspective, astrologically interesting ones. Austria, Finland, and Sweden are joining the European Union. Then look, the euro as the official currency of the European Union is being adopted. And this is happening in 1995 again with Saturn in Aquarius as he is now. And when the euro was adopted as official currency of the European Union, this is replacing the official back then EQ. So let's see further on my list. Then Internet Explorer was released. Microsoft Windows was released in 1993. The webcam, I don't know what this means, Bloomberg and MTV were released. Let's see more events. And then 1996, I will not look at specifically at months because we look very globally. I noted the months, but I would rather not mention. 1996, Clinton and Al Gore. Clinton is the president, Al Gore is president, how you call deputy president, or I don't know. We have the same level of inflation, interestingly. The US troops entered Bosnia. And guess what? Genetically modified food is being introduced. And when is it happening? When Saturn is entering Pisces. Pisces. This is now very interesting because Pisces is originally the 12th house of the zodiac, which is about compassion, empathy, humanity. This is about the sick, the poor, spirituality. You know, it is Pisces is recognized for the era of Christianity. This is the era of compassion. It is a lot about the humanity, human beings. It is, yes, you will say genetically modified food has nothing to do with Pisces. It has to do because when you look from another perspective, Venus is exalted. In Pisces, Venus is much related to pleasure and food. And also food is the source of life. You know, it's a lot about humanity. It is a lot about health. And genetically modified food is being released in 1996 officially. I know they've been doing this much before. Also, clones, that time, you know, the dolly, the sheep or whatever was also introduced. I know, or announced. I know they've been doing this before that, but this happened after Saturn entered Pisces. So we look further what to expect from Saturn. Then Saturn, let me open here another bracket. Because of his slow motion and because of his cycle, when he influences us solely by transit, we know that his influence will have a long-lasting effect, and we will experience his energies and results of his motions for at least 30 years after his important aspect or motion or direction. So let's see. Even though Saturn in Pisces is, you will say, is not that so much about innovation or finances or new technology, Saturn continues his influence and aspects with Uranus. And then look what was still discovered, or at least introduced to us. Adobe Photoshop, Internet Explorer, search engines, the powerful search engines which we use now, Yahoo, Netscape. In 1997, with Saturn in Pisces, Facebook, Google were also announced, and Diana, Princess Diana, was killed because she was example of empathy, Piscean energy. She was killed, and Mother Teresa died, and this happened with Saturn in Pisces. So let's see what we have so far. And like I said, the events are many, many, many. I took the ones that are very significant for the era. So I chose events which took place 30 years ago when Saturn was in Aquarius aspecting Uranus. And then just to compare the energies, I mentioned to you some events which took place, world events which took place while Saturn was in Pisces. And what we see changes in the financial systems, very, very important changes. You see, I mentioned to you the euro as a global currency of the European Union was introduced. This is very, very serious. The Maastricht Treaty, which is officializing the European Union, which is announcing the presence of the European Union as global organization was announced. See, we have the financial aspect, and we have also the aspect which has to do with globalization. Back then, we started speaking about globalizing, and this happened with the startup of the European Union. Then we had the wars of former Yugoslavia. We had the Persian Gulf. We had Russia with Chechnya. And this is due to the heliacal, also helped by, not due only, helped by the heliacal rise of Mars in Aries. Let's see what is happening. I mentioned to you just before Saturn entered Aquarius, we have the heliacal rise of Mars in Scorpio, and Mars in Scorpio is equally powerful. So we had the beginning of the war. I expected this, I announced it. You can see my video back in 2020 when I announced what the presence of Mars in Pisces will bring. Then we all see how we are being, how to say, pushed towards this enslavement, further enslavement of humanity, which is the introduction of the new global currency for the world. And this is very possibly to take place when we look back historically at the presence of Saturn 1993 to 1996 in Aquarius. We had again changes in the global financial system, and this is what might take place now while Saturn will be in Aquarius, and this might happen more towards 2025. Then, yes, the wars I mentioned. I don't even need to speak further. You can make your own conclusions based on the historical facts which I just listed to you, based on the financial system, globalization, based on further expansion or of the internet technology, which in our modern time would be translated into the artificial intelligence. Back then it was search engines, Internet Explorer, Google, Yahoo, Photoshop, photo camera, Photoshop or whatever. And now this will be translated into artificial intelligence, new currency. So unfortunately, these were the fears of most of us, and could be that these world events will take place because we see similarities with 1993 to 1996. But, big but, indeed, this may happen. But remember, back then, were we that informed? Were we that spiritual? Were we that enlightened, if you want? With such, the collective consciousness now is totally on another level. And again, I will tell you why. This is because, again, when Saturn entered Capricorn, I think this was January of 2021, Jupiter and Saturn formed great conjunction, very rare, gorgeous conjunction. They formed this beautiful conjunction which resembled the Star of Bethlehem, which happened 800 years ago one time, and most probably the previous time was when Jesus Christ was born. Obviously, this conjunction had great global giant meaning for us. So now we have more information. So the question is, if back then we were asleep, if in 1993 we were asleep and we would allow just anything to happen to us, are we that asleep now? What to do would be the question in order to prevent us from the events that might happen, events that we don't desire to happen. Well, we certainly need to play our own role, because now we are awake. We have no excuse basically to say, to be to say that we don't care, or to just let the events happen without our role, our part. I don't say that we really need to fight against the future of the humanity, which we don't desire to happen, but we certainly have our own. You see, when we play very responsible role, when we are responsible for our own destiny, when we form the reality around ourselves, the reality that we want, we are already participating in the future of humanity. Because globally, astrologically, is very possible the events which happened from 1993 to 1996 to take place now, but more difficult and more negative for us, but we certainly can prevent those from happening. In addition, I was thinking about the, one second, excuse me, something. Apologies for the interruption. I thought the thing is not recording. I was thinking about another important event, which we also need to know in order to somehow prevent. And this is the next heliacal rise of Mars, which is taking place, I wrote it, taking place in May, 2nd of May of 2024. In the 7 degrees of Pisces, the heliacal rise of Mars in Pisces. So it's a very interesting heliacal rise, because Mars will be with Uranus, with Rahu, and with Mercury. So this is happening. What is Pisces all about? The Piscean energy is about, like I just said, empathy. It is about health. It is about spirituality. This is the Christian energy of love, compassion, forgiveness. This is the 12th house in astrology, is represented, ruled by Pisces, Jupiter. And this is the house of the poor, of the sick, of the temple, if you want. This is the house of the bad karma. And Mars is becoming visible there with Rahu. This is explosive. This will bring very serious events to the world, unless we all are awake and we, we show very strong presence simply with our belief system, energy. Like I said, I don't see this as people going to open fight. Certainly not. But when we are awake, when we know, then we do not participate in the destructive agenda. So the heliacal rise of Mars in 2024 in Pisces is not an easy, it's not promising easy events. This could be indeed quite destructive, negative. But again, astrology is about informing us in order to change the events, because nothing is set on stone. I mentioned this many times. Before I had totally different opinion, but I understood that astrology is meant to show us the main directions, the main developments in the future, so that we can influence and change what we do not want to take place, to happen. So yes, challenging times might be ahead, but we certainly have the powers to be the change, because we are the children of the Creator. So we do have the powers to create our own reality, to help others, to influence others. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, this was interesting and maybe helpful, your comments are very welcome, especially for that video. I hope to hear your comments, your opinions. If some of you have interesting spiritual experiences and also know things about the future, please share. This will be important for every one of us. But I do believe that as creators, we can also create and change events. Certainly, I'm sure. I do not only believe it, I know it. All the best. See you soon.